I just want to welcome everyone today. This is the Ohio Writers Guild. I'm the facilitator. We talk all about writing and publishing. And so I want to introduce myself. I am a passive income mentor, but what I have is an online academy called the Kathy Benner International Academy. And you can find it by just putting in your search engine, kathybenner.com, my website, and it'll take you over to the academy, and then you can scroll down and you can see where there's all things about writing. So that's enough about me. If anyone wants to check out the academy, please feel free to do that. I put it in the chat. Again, it's kathybenner.com. But today, and I want to jump right in because Juliette can't stay with us the entire hour, and so today I want to jump right in. I want to introduce Sandy. And so briefly, I'm just going to say that Sandy is my co-host, my co-mod for the Ohio Writers Guild and for this particular podcast. And Sally is also a co-host, co-mod for it. I'm going to actually, Sally, make you a co-host there. And Sandy and Sally support this particular podcast with all things writing. Now, Sandy is going to tell us all about, she is our guest today as well, and she's going to tell us all about her Into the Springs Writers Workshop. But before we do that, since she is our guest, I'm going to jump over to Sally. Sally is a blogger and also a travel agent. And Sally, I'm going to let you tell folks what it is that you do.
Well, like Kathy said, I do blog and I do write occasionally, but I am a travel agent. I'm a full service travel agent, but I specialize in tours for older adults. I used to say seniors, but I didn't want that confused with seniors as in high school. So, and I also work with several companies that will provide any needs such as motorized wheelchairs or oxygen equipment, things like that. So people who thought they could not travel can. Actually, we've helped several people to realize their dreams, and that's what it is all about. For sure. I have a quick question, and this is for another time because I've run up. I don't, of course, not have written a lot, but I've read a lot, and I have favorite authors. I'm sure you all do. Lately, though, I got a book of Michael Crichton. Well, he's dead. He collaborated with James Patterson on a book called Eruption. Normally, Michael Crichton books, they just grab you from the get-go. The first one I read of his was Jurassic Park. So.
Okay.
The tone has changed a little bit, and I don't know. It was like middle of the book before I got to the point where I couldn't put it down. So I wonder, as a question, and it happened to another author I've been reading. What happens when authors do that, or is it?
Are you just?
I'm putting it out there because we have.
Okay, so you're saying that as books get published and as authors are doing more and more and more work, that some of their later work is not as engaging as some of their earlier work. Is that the question?
Yeah, of course, Michael Crichton was dead when this book came out, that it was collaborated with James Patterson. And I don't know if that had something to do with it. That
particular situation could have to do with maybe some ghostwriting that went on to finish the project. I don't know. I can only speculate.
The very beginning, his books always get you at the very beginning, so you can't put them down. Not this one. I mean,
not so much. Okay,
not so much. And
so because he has spoken about it, and you can find it in Open Press, it was almost certainly at least partially ghostwritten. Michael Crichton actually no longer really writes all of his books himself. He creates very detailed outlines, and then he has collaborators and co-authors that actually finish off his manuscripts. Right, but James Patterson, who is completing those stories, right? So Michael Crichton has passed. James Patterson is who is taking on those characters and telling their stories through them. And so you've gotten kind of a twofold thing. So Michael Crichton is dead, so his voice will change because he is no longer the one writing the books. And then you have James Patterson's voice, who has changed because he is using a process of collaborators and co-authors with his detailed outlines.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they rely on the fact that Michael Crichton is so well known that you'll forgive him for whether he's alive or not. You'll forgive him and say, I know this is going to get better because it has to be, as all other books are.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens too. But unfortunately for that, and you caught on. You're a sharp reader.
Yes.
It's sad. It's like your favorite singer who doesn't have a voice anymore. Like, no. So
Yeah. I have another book I'm reading by another author who is alive.
yeah,
Jonathan Kellerman. He writes murder mysteries.
yeah,
Again, his books usually get me from the very beginning, but I haven't
yeah,
been able to get into this one. So
yeah.
that's my
No.
2 cents.
No, I like to talk books, so I I like when
Oh,
you
I
brought
do too. I love it.
that
I love
topic
it.
up.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Sally, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that question.
Yeah.
And Sally, did you put in the chat how folks can reach you?
No.
Okay, I don't see that yet. Make sure it goes out to everyone. Again, Sally is a travel agent and a blogger. She has a cute little blog. Tell us the name of your blog, Sally.
Embrace the unexpected.
I
like
love
that.
that title, Embrace the Unexpected. I love that. So you can see in the chat, it's Sally at mermaidtravels.tours if anyone wants to connect with Sally. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sandy, and I'm going to let Sandy tell you a little bit about Juliette and introduce her. But as we segue over to you, Sandy, I'd like to know just a little bit about your background and how you ended up with the Into the Springs Writers Workshop. This is such a great story, and we're going to put it out there on the podcast so other folks can get to know Sandy. Over to you, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is like almost an anniversary because what I've been promoting Into the Springs, and I asked way back when, Kathy, if I could come on and talk about Into the Springs. And from there, from one, I must have been an audition because from that day
I wasn't
forward,
expecting it to be, but I just fell in love with you from the first moment, Sandy.
thank you, thank you. And from that point, I became a co-host, which is like, woohoo! I tell people I'm a co-host and they think I'm hot stuff, but they don't know that all I do is make sure, oh, 10 minutes too. I sign on. Woo! Kathy does all the work. I just listen, take notes, and fill in here and there. So thank you again, Kathy. For many, many years, my top number one career that bled into everything I did was teach high school English. I taught the AP classes, the basic classes, everything in between, some creative writing, though it was not would be unusual if I had a student come up to me and say, "Ooh, I'd like to be a creative writer." Because when you're a high school teacher, you learn real fast students are not in your classes to become English teachers or writers. They are there to pass the class and get out as fast as they can. So that was where I spent most of my career days. But somewhere near the end, before I stepped away, I wanted to do my own writing. I wanted to be professionally published. And I knew that my resume had to change from academic to more to novel writing, even nonfiction. And from there, I wanted to learn because I think, man, once I get out of here, how long out of the classroom, how long is it going to take me to learn how to be an author? So I started a little early. It does help to be in a community. If this is your community here, stay with it. Because in Yellow Springs, for over 30 years, there was a group called the Antioch Writers Workshop. Because it's not far from me, and my workshop is in Yellow Springs, I met somebody who was a freelance writer. We got to be friends, and from there, she found herself swamped with she did nonfiction work for a company that's no longer in business. But she goes, Sandy, I don't have any time they want me to write about a GW. And I go, George Washington. She goes, yeah, George Washington. I go, well, I can write about George Washington. I also taught research paper. I mean, how hard could that be? And then this will be the time element. Well, I got in touch with the editor. I think, hi, I'm friends with Wendy, and that sort of. Well, it wasn't George Washington. It was G.W. Bush, and he was just elected president. And I thought, well, where do you find this stuff out? I talk about all the way back. We all become like kindergarten kids at some point in time. Like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, how do I do this? Wow. So I started to do the research. Thank goodness his father was president before him, because his son appeared in a lot of uh, George Bush Sr.'s biographies. So I wrote that, sent it off. Then I got another title and sent it off. Well, it all worked where, I joined a writing group, and you start everything from the ABCs. Joined a writers group, found some other people who are also writers, and realized that if I wanted to get a novel, now I wanted to change back into something more fictionalized. I thought, this is going to take me forever, because my first writing was a dream. Some kids want to be firemen and astronauts. I wanted to be a mermaid. And thank goodness my mom says, do you realize what would have to happen for you to be a mermaid? So I always dreamed of it. And when I thought, I'm writing my novel about a mermaid, I realized that that dream was 1 page long. Go, what do I do? Well, how do I fill a book? So now I had to start taking classes and figuring out, how do I transfer this into multiple pages rather than one. And I started with short stories, because I knew if I learned how to do a good beginning, middle, and an end, I could now just enlarge that and learn how to fill all the rest in. So that's where my fiction took off, and mostly I'm known for short stories. That novel is still swimming around in the big sea, but I think it'll see the light of day very soon. Well, that gal who was a freelance writer, she said, I'd like to do a writer's workshop in Yellow Springs. At that point in time, unfortunately, the Antioch Writers Workshop had stopped, and there had been
Ah.
nothing official in Yellow Springs. And if you don't know anything about Yellow Springs, please, that's worth
Mhm.
plugging it into your website, into your Google search, and finding out a loads of the uniqueness of the town. And I said, sure, Wendy, I will help you. Well, the first year I helped her. Actually, by that time, I pooled a lot of friends that I knew who were writers from a variety of genres. And then the next year, she couldn't do it because of health reasons, asked me if I'd fill in. I did. And then after that, she goes, you know what, Sandy? If you want this, it's all yours. I go,
Oh, wow. What did you think when she said that?
well, I don't
Did you
know.
feel like you were back in kindergarten again? Like, well, now I have to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, and it by that time I had been the chair of my English department. I had been the
Okay.
president of my teachers union. I have written so much curriculum. I was seeing it as just a different type of curriculum. But
Okay.
yes, it was a shock because it isn't exactly that. But I restructured it. And of course, there's money that has to be involved. I couldn't fill a
Mhm.
room with a lot of writers. So what had begun to occur starting in 2018 was 17, 18 is when we started. COVID came around, gave me a chance to kind of decide, how do I want to do this? Where do I want to do this? I was at a community center in Yellow Springs, and I picked up friends. One of a good professional friend is Jane Friedman, who, if you ever hear about her, another one that's really great to look up on the internet. She's a social media star, lives in Cincinnati. I says, I want her, but I can't be in a community center that seats maybe 20 people. And I was doing it all. I was cooking, I was providing the food, the drink, all that kind of stuff. So I went over to the Mills Park Hotel and says, hi, you don't know me, but I would love to have a workshop there. So I have been there. And yes, Jane Friedman did show up, and now I could fit 40 to 60 people in the room. And I learned by myself without making too many serious mistakes, because that always happens.
Mhm.
And you just don't want it to run up a flagpole and everybody gawk at you like you're on the evening news. But I have focused it now to just 2 to 3 featured guests, because I know as a writer, I'm going to I melt into the crowd, but yet I still want to be considered as a unique individual. So I think, how do I do that for writers? Well, if I bring 2 to 3 people in, then the folks as the writers registrants can have access to them. It's not one of those where it's 9 o'clock. Where do you want to be? This session, that session, or that session? Oh no, we all do this
Mhm.
together, which is a challenge. If I have Juliette and I have Vicky, can they work together? The writing muses are with me because it has worked out perfectly so far, and it's going to work out perfect.
Sandy, I've been in a couple of writers' workshops where you had to choose, and sometimes I'm really torn because I really wanted to hear both topics, and I'm like, oh, I got to pick one. So
Yeah.
again, I really like the Into the Springs Writers Workshop. I'll give a little shameless plug as we're chatting. It's still my favorite one.
I like that, Kathy Benner. Yes, and thank you for that. And I think maybe that is part of it too. We share the same space. I work with my featured guests. I always hope that they could collaborate. And Juliette will be talking here in a bit. And in a Zoom, I have a literary agent, Vicky Salvaggio, on board, and I have Juliette. And I go, how do I work those two? Will they work together? And I knew Vicky from another Vicky Salvaggio from another workshop that I attended. I think this is going to work. And I know Juliette, she's been at Into the Springs before, so she knows the demand. Because a lot of times Juliette may be done with her session, but that doesn't mean she disappears somewhere until she comes to another session. I ask that they stay in the room as much as they can. I will have writers say, "Oh, I've got a big deadline," and I put them up in the Mills Park Hotel. So I says, okay, after 10 minutes, you could disappear, but then come back 10 minutes before the session's over. So if that author who attending didn't think of the question that they wanted to ask, but it comes to them hours after they've attended the session, that featured guest is right there and can be asked that question. And there are a lot of very shy, introverted writers out there that it takes a while to gain that courage to ask that question. So I want the featured guest to be there when that question needs to be asked. So that's how that develops. And when I had, and with this, and Juliette may talk about it or I may talk about it, Vicky, the agent, is going to talk about query letter writing because this is called the traditional publishing end of it. And even if you're not traditionally published, and believe me, she mentioned she has represented folks who are self-published. She calls herself the business end of writing, and the author is the creative end. And definitely Vicky wants to help that out. So here I am. How do I talk about query letter writing? Well, Juliette is my is simulating that author going after an agent. And like she's going to be in the same session with Vicky. So Juliette and Vicky will talk about, well, Juliette will have the really great query letter and the query letter and the oh my gosh, no way query letter. And between the two of them, Vicky will be able to illustrate what makes a good query letter. That's the same with when you're pitching a book. Here's another thing that I require. If you go to workshops in which there's an agent or agents, they always divide up their 10-minute pitch sessions throughout the whole thing. And a lot of times you are leaving a session because the agent, you've signed up for this particular time and somebody's doing something else, but you're going to go talk to that agent. And I asked Vicky, I says, is it possible that we won't do that, that we could have enough pitch times before sessions start, during lunch, after sessions, in the evening? And Vicky, of course, is such a wonderful person, said, sure, we could do that. So there's only one time, one time in which they will overlap, and that is when Juliette said, oh, I could do that. So on a Saturday, what is that, about 10 or so? On a Saturday, Juliette's going to talk about writing. Pen to paper is what she calls them. And you'll have writing exercises. And while she's doing that for about 10 to 11 for about an hour, then folks who don't want to be up that late or that early can have their pitch session with Vicky upstairs in the conference room. So there's a collaboration, and Juliette's going to be the will give pitches too, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so it'll be nice for Vicky, the agent, to be able to talk about what works, what doesn't work, what she's looking for, how she's thinking. So the syllabus is full. I hope people eat their Wheaties and get their naps in, because I really eke out everything that I can for them, because once they leave, I want them to come back, of course, but I also hope that they're exhausted, but yet enthusiastic about getting back to their solitary kind of writing lives. And and there's other things going on before I just go through it. I just want to mention we have an open mic night because we also celebrate writing. Saturday night, it's open mic readings, 10 minutes. Read to us something you've written. I have book sales on Sunday morning. I've moved them to Sunday morning, which is the busiest time for Ellie's Restaurant at the Mills Park Hotel. And from 9:30 to 10:30, we have book sales in the banquet room, where we're also having all our classes, except for Juliette. She's our mascot of the day, representing every single author out there in the lobby and encouraging people to come into the banquet hall and look at all the other authors there. Book critiques, lunches together, and part of the tab, and there's convenient free parking that can't be beat. You even get a special parking pass, because about 7,000 to 12,000 people come through Yellow Springs in a weekend, in a day. Parking is a premium, and if you have Into the Springs Mills Park Hotel parking pass in your dashboard, you are with us for free for the rest of the day. But at this point, let me introduce Juliette. I've known her from a couple romance writing workshops and groups. I used to be president of Central Health Fiction Writers, and Juliette's been a mainstay there as well. She lives in our area. And so please take it away, Juliette. And where you're shy and humble, I will definitely fill in and brag about you. I can't wait to spend the weekend with her.
Hi, everyone. So as Sandy said, I am Juliette Hyland. I am a romance author. I am traditionally published, although I do have an indie book out as well. So I'm what's considered a hybrid publisher, a hybrid author. And so I have, as of last week, I have 25 books out with Harlequin, Mills and Boon. They have been put into multiple languages. It's wild, so I get my foreign copies. You see them back behind me when those come in. And it's been a real crazy run, to be completely honest. There are a lot of things that there are tons of blogs and things out there on how, quote unquote, to get published, although no one's path looks the same. And I always joke that, once you get behind those doors, then there's about a million other questions that you have and that you want to ask. And there aren't nearly as many blogs or people that can or are willing to talk that sort of the side of the house. So I have always said, once I stumbled around into the back of Harlequin and Mills Boon, because I am actually unagented. So I am a traditionally published author with one of the big five that doesn't have an agent. And so I always joke that I am basically an open book. I am willing to answer as many questions as I can. I want people to understand all of the highs and lows that come with authoring, and kind of what you can do throughout the course of your career, both in learning the different craft pieces that are required for genre fiction writing. So we are going to be talking some of those things. We're going to be talking, characters to root for, how to make sure that you have character flaw that readers want to read. We are also going to be going over goal, motivation, and conflict. And what I will tell you, since Sally brought it up a little bit earlier, generally speaking, when a book stumbles, when you get to what I call the muddy middle, or you're not really kicking off fast enough, you're not hooking that reader in, it's almost always a motivation issue. It's where the motivation of the character is just not coming through clearly. That's what drives the story from start to finish. And so we're going to kind of go over some of those, how to perfect your goal, motivation, and conflict so that you don't get stuck with a book that people either start and the first, 50 pages are like, this is fantastic. And then suddenly they're like, okay, but loses steam. Or on the flip side, how many of us have been recommended a book where we get told, listen, you just have to get through the first 100 pages. It's like, okay, no. Life is too short. There are too many books out there in the world for us to be taking time to really get into the actual story itself. And then I'm going to be also talking some of the what I call potholes of authoring. So some of the missteps that are really easy to kind of stumble into unintentionally, only because you don't realize what the actual career-wise authoring path looks like. There are things that you think once you get behind that door are going to be super duper easy to figure out, particularly if you are in the trad world. And so we're going to actually talk why sometimes what we think and what reality are two kind of different things, and how to deal with some of those potholes. So, and then we are going to be talking Vicki and I have a lot of simulated work that we're going to be doing together. She and I have been having emails. Actually, we had several this morning going back and forth on some of the simulations that we're doing. I sent the query letters. It's not that the good and the okay query letters aren't something that you want to learn from. Those are the ones that you want to learn from. But I will say, my super bad query letter that I wrote made Vicki laugh hysterically and say that she gets several like that every year. So you really want to be there for that, because you want to make sure you don't get one that Vicki is constantly saying like, oh yeah, I've been there. You don't want these. So, but yeah, overall, I am happy to take questions, to talk more about kind of what we're going to be doing, to talk about, how we're going to start crafting some of those stories. Sandy asked me to be here, and as she kind of alluded to, I am not shy in any way, shape, or form. I am willing to answer pretty much anything.
Yep. Juliette, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate getting to meet you early, and I'll see you, of course, at the workshop.
Great.
Now, I realize for those of you that are tuning in, you're not real sure what to expect from each of our podcast calls. And today we are simply talking about the workshop that's coming up the first weekend in August, because we're not back on a podcast until after the workshop. So this is the last podcast before the workshop. And for the Ohio Writers Guild, this is kind of our big aha moment of the year, is that we invite the tribe to attend the workshop, because it's just so valuable. And again, like I was telling Sandy earlier, it is one of my favorite workshops, and I've been to several now, and it is still my favorite one. So please put it on your calendar and click through on the link. It's Into the Springs writersworkshop.com. And you can also email Sandy. She put her email there in the chat if you have any questions about the workshop early. So any questions for Sandy or Juliette? Anyone at all? And I know we're talking about the writing process, but for those of you that know me, my background is more on the business side of writing. I came from the business side. And so I always go there first in my mind. And so again, I want to chat just a little bit with Sandy about the fact that books are business. And a lot of times you will have a writer that is like, well, I'm going to self-publish. I don't think I want to traditionally publish because I don't want somebody to tell me how to change my story. And then that very same writer that self-publishes, and kudos to you. And again, you have to decide why you're writing to be that at the very beginning, you have to ask your question, why am I writing this book? I mean, if it's just because you love to write, then by all means, or if you're writing it for your family, like a memoir or whatever, I get that. But if you hope to actually make a career out of writing, then you have to pay attention to the fact that books are business. And so by going through the traditional publishing route, you will have some feedback and some editorial changes to make your book more sellable. So Sandy, talk about that a little bit, and maybe Juliette.
Sure. Yes, it's heart-rendering when you work in the arts, be it a painter, a musician, a singer, a writer, because it involves your heart and your soul, your compassion, your inner feelings, and you're putting it out there in the public, and to hear the public say, no, I don't think so. Or no, it's a challenge. I like the fact that Juliette's willing to be that person in the simulations with query letters and with pitches, because there's nothing like, I wonder, I've taken that poor little mermaid story on the road and pitched it myself quite a few times, made stupid errors, oh my Lord, but have given it a shot. And it still would hurt to this day to get a rejection letter. But you say, okay, let me see if I can go to this person. And how do you do that? The business side is not necessarily the artistic side. It involves that more, the less emotion, because how do you do this 300-page book, but the pitch, Vicky only wants to hear 3 minutes. You've got 3 minutes to float that whole thing down. And that's clinical. That's critical. That's mathematical. That is so not writing as a heartfelt moment. But that's, of course, what she's going to talk about. How do you? Because the rest of those 10 minutes is what she wants to be able to ask you questions about. So there's always a challenge. But if you could do that with someone like a literary agent, you can now create your blog, create your posts that will advertise your books, and get things down to that. We laugh and say, oh, you can't make me do that. Well, okay, but if you're writing your blurb for the back of your book, the inside cover, if you're on Amazon and you need to now melt your whole story down to a few sentences, to indeed, Sally, you were omniscient here, to sell your book to the reader right off the bat, because there is something, you could take a whole class in this. I took a session on, if you go on Amazon and you read the review or the line that introduces the book, how good can you get it? Because people won't click the more. There's the little word that says more that's on to the next page. People won't click that unless they have to. So how can you make them want to do that? So whatever you say, I mean, how many words is that, Juliette? 25, 30 maybe?
Well, and that's one of the other games you have to play, because how many words it is depends on whether or not someone is looking at it on their phone or on a computer.
Yeah.
So I will tell you that the vast majority of people at this point are doing at least initial searches on their phones. So you actually want to be even tighter, because you don't have as much space if you're looking at a screen that is this size versus one that is my full max size screen here. The other thing that I will tell people about, as someone who writes as very much a business, Juliette Hyland is a business. I write what I know my publisher knows will sell. That does not mean that I am not really proud of my books. I'm incredibly proud of my books. I love writing my books. However, my books are my babies until the very first time they're sent to my editor. After that, they become my employees. Their job is to sell and make me money. And that can take some of that initial heartbreak when you don't get the exact feedback that you were hoping for or anything kind of away. I will also say, and that goes for whether you're writing in the indie world or whether or not you're writing in a traditionally published world. if your book is not getting 1-star reviews, your book is not being read widely enough. No book, if it is getting read by hundreds or thousands of people, which is what you're aiming for, is going to have 5 stars across the board. If that is happening, that is someone who has paid for reviews. And 1-star reviews absolutely can sell your book. I have had people before that have I had one that gave me a 1-star that was, the writing is great and I love the writing. I'm just so sick of royal romances. And I was like, okay, I can use parts of that. Absolutely. Also, it was titled The Prince's One Night Baby, so it was right there in the context clues, but that's okay. I can still take some of the meat of that and use it. I have someone else, particularly if you're writing stuff that's on the spicier side, some of those 1-star reviews can be used that way, but it takes a little bit of time sometimes. I personally give myself 24 hours when my editorial letters come in. I get 24 hours to kind of mince mentally with my editor before I send stuff back. But this is also a business. Just because an editorial letter comes in, or if you're working with a development editor that you have paid in the indie type world, that doesn't mean that you have to take every single suggestion. I have had times where I have gone back to my editor and I said, listen, I really don't want to change that. But when you're on the business side, what really needs to happen there is I don't want to change that, which means whatever I'm trying to make come true obviously isn't coming true clear enough. It's not coming through in the read. It's not coming through where I need to. So this is what my actual design is. Which part of this is not clear and how do we make it clearer? So it is that back and forth relationship that you develop with your team, whether that's your editorial team, whether that is a developmental editor that you are paying to do down the indie pathway, however that works. All of that is much more on the business side of the house versus having it as a creative venture.
Yeah. Yeah, books being business, it's great and it is challenging at times because how do you rivet your audience to the root for your characters, but then follow that guideline just so they make money. So people pass it on and buy more, That's good. Thank you. And Juliette is available. We'll finally get a break somewhere, 10 minutes or a lunch or whatever. And then there she is in the lobby chatting with people. So she is a wealth of knowledge and 25 books. How many years have you been writing? Wow. Okay. How many years have you been published?
So I will preface this with I always say, this is not something that everyone can do, so I want to be very clear on that. I sold my debut to Harlequin in September of 2019, and I published in 2020. My debut published in 2020. So that is 25 books with Harlequin, 25 books / online reads with Harlequin in about 5.5 years.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. Now I want to jump in because I know Juliette has another commitment and I don't want to make her late. So Juliette, just give us the high sign when you have to go because we know you had another commitment. But before you do, please put back into the chat under everyone how folks can get in touch with you. So in case we had some folks that came on late and didn't scroll up in the chat, they'll see how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
And then just let us know if you need to jump off. Any other questions for Sandy or for Juliette before she has to go?
One of the final roundup sessions that Juliette and Vicky will do is called recommended resources. So between the two of them, they'll be providing and talking about links and blogs and places where you can go that once you get back home, even though what I do about a month after the workshop's over, I send out my final newsletter of the season is about resources and how to get in touch and what kind of writing groups are in the area and who in the room might be that in a group that they would welcome other people. So recommended resources is one of those sessions that I think are very worthwhile.
And if you want to be a writer, get involved in these writing groups. Immerse
Yeah.
yourself with other writers. You will learn so much just by observing. You know, because a lot of times what I've discovered is a lot of times writers are a little bit reclusive. You know, we do our work behind closed doors, you know, and while the rest of the family is out watching the TV or whatever. And so sometimes we do distance ourselves. And so getting into those writers groups are so important.
You know, and even down to the tables. Table seat 8 at the banquet hall at the Mills Park Hotel. And what was it, last year, the year before, in which somebody raised their hand and saying, by Saturday, had said, hey, any other fantasy writers here? How about if we gather at this table? I'm thinking, wow, who am I? I set it up, and they start to flourish on their own. And some of them have connected and done writing together, or at least they'll have the idea of pitching an idea that they were thinking that finally gets vocalized. So any questions, please ask.
Yeah, and my husband actually came home a little early, so he's off to get my daughter, so I can actually stay until 1. So.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Juliette. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again, Juliette, for solving that mystery.
Sure, of course.
The books.
But it is also true that writers' voices do change over the course of their publishing career, particularly if you are fortunate to have a long publishing career. Just it's between growth and expectations that change within the reader communities. The romance books that you are reading in 2025 don't look very much like the romance books that I stole off my mom and my grandmother's shelf in 1995. So a lot of that is also just kind of the changing reality of publishing as it is too.
Well, our voices change too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how we perceive things.
Yep, absolutely.
Sure. Sure. And I'm sure how you even advertise your mermaid travel as you look over it over your career there, probably you could see the changes and how you explain things, how you word things. And it's writing is very much a challenge and a worry. We talk about AI, which is very helpful in a lot of ways, but it's one thing to be helpful, another to be replacing of. And I think about readers today, what are they looking for? It is thrilling every time I see a book festival or a bookshop or a bookstore or all the people who crowd because their favorite author is going to be at a certain place. That is just super. And I don't think it matters how old you are either. You often think maybe it's for folks from way back when, but no, there are fascinating people today, young people who are reading, and we got to fill their satisfaction with good stories. And we have a lot of writers who can do that. And there's that indeed. And that's what's nice with Into the Springs is that I try to mesh those together, that touchy feely, oh, don't we like a good book, with you want to now write a good book. Now let's do the tools. And then in the end, we can shine up that Jaguar and take it for a spin in the end. So that's what we do here. And Juliette has been with me before in the past. And when I was I always look, I have one of my featured guests for the following year, August 7th, 8th, and 9th, I think it is. And planning for that. So when I was planning Vicky last year, I had her when the workshop was going on. And then Juliette said, hey, would you like? And I like that because again, she's the ABCs, not only the touchy-feely, because in romance, you have to hit the heart of the reader too. But there's a lot
I would argue you have to hit it in all genre fiction. All genre fiction has reader expectations. Whether you're writing a cozy mystery, a romance, a thriller, your readers expect a certain type of story when they are picking those books up. And if you don't deliver them, and things like what Sally was talking about earlier with Michael Crichton on the book not picking up fast enough, the one that he and James Patterson wrote. You are making a deal with your reader when you are picking up a mystery or a thriller that the pacing is going to hit very, very fast. That's one of the expectations of the readers when they grab those books. And if you don't deliver, then you get people that feel let down by the book as a whole, because the implicit promise that the author has given them when they pick up that book has not been met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Juliette, I do have a question for you. When you write, do you have a particular audience in mind? Do you have that avatar, if you will, of who you're writing for?
So I write what's called category romance. So with category romance, so the romance genre expectation is a happily ever after or happy for now. So if you are picking up a romance book, if the characters do not end up happily ever after, then you're not writing a romance. You're writing either women's fiction or general fiction or something of that nature. I write category romance, which means there's a secondary layer of expectation that is on. So I write for 2 of Harlequin's lines. So when I am writing for the medical line, my characters are in medical fields or veterinarians. So I love doing veterinarians, so I can add in cute pets all the time. For those readers, I have someone who is very interested in things like Grey's Anatomy or ER or, those kind of like medical dramas. That is a very different audience, although there is crossover, not as much as you might think, but there is crossover for my other line, which I write for, which is called the romance line. And that is what I like to call wealth and power and high fantasy. It is CEOs and billionaires and princes and kings. My very first one was they're over the top. My very first one was a princess lottery. Like he literally draws her name out of a glass bowl. Those are 2 very different kind of reader groups that are looking for that. For my indie, I published a small town Western. Again, the crossover for readers is going to be, because some people just like to read tons of romance books. I am one of them. I read across all different kinds of romance. But you do kind of have an idea when you are building it that you're looking for people that are looking for kind of those specific elements of that category.
So once you determine who your audience is that you're writing for, then you can come back and decide, okay, I now know what they want. I know what they expect. So now as you're writing your story, you can get your beats in time to keep their interest because you already know. How do you find out once you, because let's say a brand new writer in the group has an idea to write something, but they haven't really put pen to paper yet. They're just learning about beats. They're just learning how to craft their story, but they don't know how soon in, let's say, girl has to meet boy or when that conflict starts. How do you find that information as a new writer?
So the best way, in all seriousness, to kind of get a feel for what the modern audience wants is to read releases that are out within the last 6 months. So, and reading them voraciously, as many of them as you can find. And that goes for whether or not you're writing a cozy mystery or a romance or, thrillers or horror or whatever. Finding things, because if you reach back towards, so like right now, if you're writing fantasy and you look simply at George R. R. Martin's series that will never get finished. Wow, I'm still salty about that. There is a group of readers that if and when he ever finishes A Song of Ice and Fire, will pick up those books in order to complete the series. Fantasy has moved past him. We are not really in a ton of epic fantasy time right now. Now, there are still very seasoned authors who are producing it and they're being well read. Brandon Sanderson is one who comes immediately to mind. But a lot of it now has kind of transitioned into not short work. So you're still looking at, 80 to 100,000 words. But you're not looking at the 200,000 epic fantasy type thing. So if you are trying to aim for the modern market, you want to be reading those authors that are putting stuff out right now, because the market moves incredibly fast. You will find that people that are, so if you're, so let's say you have a book done for Into the Springs and you pitch it to Vicky, and Vicky says, I want to see the first 10, I want to see the first chapter, which is a lot of times what agents will ask for at these. She reads the first chapter. She's like, this is fantastic. I want to see the whole manuscript. Then you send her the whole manuscript. You're probably looking at least 6 months out from Into the Springs for when Vicky is able to get, because keep in mind, her first block of people she needs to respond to are her current clients. So you're probably looking at 6 months before she looks at that manuscript. Now, let's say she says, hey, this is really close, but I think in order to be marketable, we need to make some changes. Let's add on another 3 months. And that's if you're turning fast. At that point, let's say you don't even get to you probably would not get to the point where she's attempting to pitch it to trad publishers for at least a year out from when you are pitching her in August. And that's still a fairly quick timeline. At that point in August 2026, they will be looking to fill what they are going to be publishing in late 2027 and 2028. So that market churn happens really, really fast.
Wow. Those timelines are very enlightening for some of our new writers that are hoping to make writing their business. They want to actually generate some income from it. So yes, so there is a whole process there in the traditional.
Yes, there is. And keep in mind as well, if you're trying to make it a business, if you're going the traditional route, many publishers, not all, will have advances that come in. And if you are, so I write for one of the big five, so I do have advances that I get. The advance that you get if you get an advance is the only money that you are guaranteed from that book period. Most books will never earn out their advances. That's just fact. It's a hard fact, but it is a fact. I have had multiple books at this point that have earned out. And what that means is that I earn royalties on those books that have earned out for everything that I am getting. However, my royalties are paid 4 times a year. That's it. You're paid in quarters. So this is not me trying to say, don't do this. I love this path. I am on this path. I very much enjoy it. But having those kind of realistic expectations where first you have first the publishing contract, then your royalties, then earning those royalties out, and then earning your advances out, and then the royalty process itself is not something that, so consistent income is absolutely something that can be done, and people make careers out of writing, but it often takes, people always say, what's the overnight success? There is no overnight success. There are people that it looks like overnight success because you haven't been following their careers from the times when they were in the trenches.
Yeah. Nope, I get that. Yes, I certainly understand that. I saw a meme the other day and it said something like, I became an overnight success. It only took me 20 years.
Yeah.
So I started writing for Harlequin through what was called a medical blitz. They had openings in the line, and I put in a first chapter, and they guaranteed you feedback in 30 days, which in publishing timeline is lightning speed. And at the end of those 30 days, I got told, hey, we want to see the whole manuscript. That was the only feedback I got. I then had to write the manuscript. It went through 2 rounds of edits with Harlequin before I got a 2-book contract. However, I submitted to them 3 years before that a Harlequin historical. That went through 2 rounds of edits with Harlequin, and I did not get. After 2 rounds, they passed. They should have. I looked back at it. It's not good. And then before that, there are multiple things that live underneath my bed that I bring out only when I'm at writers' conferences and things to kind of showcase to people, hey, this is where I started. This is where I am at now. Because it sounds great, 25 books in 5 years. But I have been writing significantly longer than that.
Yes.
Yep,
sure. I get it. Such great information. I love this conversation. To be continued at the writers workshop. So again, Sandy, give us the details, the overview real quick, the dates, what your deadline is, and how folks can register.
Sure. The deadline to register is July 25th. So that's coming up in about 2 weeks. If you go to the website, www.uplift, intothespringswritersworkshop.com. It'll have everything you need to see and read and register there. And it is August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at the Mills Park Hotel. It starts, check-in is at 6 p.m. on a Friday, and it runs through lunchtime on Sunday. So you get a lot, and it starts early. We have my assistant and sidekick, Tara, will be there. She does the early morning, 7 to 8 a.m. if you want to. It's not required. Creative writing time. But we make sure we have hot coffee and hot tea ready by 6:45 in the banquet hall. And it takes on, and then we start at 9 a.m. So you get an hour to do breakfast at Allie's or just relax, get it together, and then we start the day at 9. And we run, Friday night's going to be a little later than normal, just to cram in, because the agent is going to be talking about what's it like to be an agent, and Juliette's going to end the day with characters to root for. You're writing exercises for that too. So I love this because Juliette's willing to lead writing sessions, and you come there wanting information, but you're excited to start to do something, write down something. And wouldn't that be a great feeling to be in a room of 40 some people all writing at the same time? Sounds great.
Yes,
August,
please bring writing material if you are coming, because we will be putting pen to paper in all of my sessions.
I always bring, that teacher in me, I always bring plenty of extra paper, pens, notebooks, stuff, just in case you need them. And Sally, it's again, omniscient. I have 2 of my attendees this year. Guess what? They're former high school students of mine. So it happens. They do want to be writers in the classroom. Anyway,
go ahead.
No, and sold out for the agent, but for extra $50, if you want Juliette to critique your first 10 pages, that's due July 18th. So that's, I think, coming up this week.
Yes.
Please do. That's on the website. She'll do a thorough look at it, and she'll meet with you over the weekend for 10 minutes or more talking about that. And query letters, Vicki is still open for query letters. So if you have that query letter and want her 2 cents on it, she gives a very thorough look at it. You'll get something back physically that you can follow, and you'll get 10 minutes with her to talk about it. So we have put everything possible in this particular workshop every year, but this year it's looking to be amazing. So we hope you find it so too.
Now, for those of us that do have some books that are already published, how many should we bring for the bookstore?
It's a challenge there to see how many. I would say like 10, if you have 10 copies of each of your titles, just to see. That's the other thing. If you are selling your books, I will make a little name tag for you, and then you can put it on the table and folks will come in. But this is also an opportunity for the folks, and by Sunday, you will have made friends, and they will want to take something home of yours, and it should be your writing, I think, your books. So
when you do that, please make sure that you bring the ability to do change. Someone who had to learn that lesson the hard way one time at hers. So just going to keep in mind.
Put that down. Thank you.
Yes, great suggestion. Thank you so much for being with us, Sandy. I appreciate you so very much. Sally, thank you for being co-host, co-mod with me. And Juliette, thank you for being on today and sharing your expertise. This has been wonderful. I can't wait for the workshop. It's coming up fast. So for those of you that are listening, and again, we're going to put this out across about 5 to 10 different channels, so we get some coverage out there for the workshop. So register soon because the deadline is coming up. So with that, we are going to go, and we will see everyone at the workshop.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.